How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about a couple different things here. First and foremost, I want to say rest in peace to the young lady by the name of Nia Wilson. She was stabbed to death in Oakland, California a few days ago by this crazy crackhead dude, a white man by the name of Lee Cowell. Now, I said he's white. That's going to matter in a little bit. The second part of what we got to talk about is an actress by the name of Anne Hathaway. Now, this is your prototypical white liberal virtue signaling on social media. Now, I'm not saying she shouldn't give her condolences to the family or express any kind of, sorrow in her heart for the loss, because obviously it's sad that this young lady was stabbed to death. But the way she went about it was really contradictory to reality. Now, before we get into all the details of why Nia was killed, or why we think she was killed, or why people think she was killed, who this guy Lee Cowell was that stabbed her, let's go ahead and get into the quote from Anne Hathaway on the Instagram. Let's go ahead and just switch to it right now. All right, there we go. And you see the young lady right over here on the left-hand side of your screen. That is Nia Wilson, 18 years old. Very sad that she passed away. She worked at a consignment store and was thinking about going into the army. Now, let's see what Anne Hathaway had to say. The murder of Nia Wilson, may she rest in the power and peace she was denied here, is unspeakable and must not be met with silence. She is not a hashtag. She was a black woman, and she was murdered in cold blood by a white man. White people, including me, including you, must take into the marrow of our privileged bones the truth that all, not some, not a couple, not a few, but all black people fear for their lives daily in America and have done so for generations. Let's pause right here. I wanted to get through the whole thing and then talk about it afterwards, but let's pause right here. If we're fearing for our lives, who is it actually from? We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I had to get off my chest right now. Let's get back to her quote. White people do not have equivalents for this fear of violence. Oh, is that right? Given those givens, we must ask our white, in parentheses, selves, how, quote unquote, decent are we really? Not in our intent, but in our actions, in our lack of action. Peace and prayers and justice for Nia and the Wilson family. And at the bottom, it says, note, the comments for this post are closed. And then there's some hashtags at the end. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag anti-racist. Hashtag no excuse. Hashtag say her name. Hashtag earn the right to say her name. Okay. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Anne Hathaway, the brilliant actress, has spoken. Now, like I said, it's very sad that Nia Wilson passed away, and the guy needs to go ahead and just get the electric chair, the needle, whatever is the best solution for him. I'm not a sympathetic person towards this individual at all that actually did the killing. So, and to get back to him, before we get to what Anne Hathaway said, let's get back to him. This guy was a drug addict, had been described by his neighbors as a quote unquote crackhead. Okay, he had been in jail for drugs before. If you read some of these articles, they won't say exactly what drugs have been arrested for. I wonder why. Maybe it's because of the out of control homeless and drug problem in San Francisco Bay Area, which is what this guy was, a homeless drug addict. Okay, and people say, "Oh, Anthony, you shouldn't be against drugs. You shouldn't be pro prohibition." Well, the reason why I'm against drugs is because you got these crazy crackheads out here interacting with regular people like Nia Wilson. If you had a little bit more tight control over the drugs that were in the area, if you did not hand out drug paraphernalia, like that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you get arrested for having drug paraphernalia where they hand out drug paraphernalia in San Francisco? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, here's a hypodermic needle, but if you get caught with that, we're going to arrest you. Or better yet, it's like, okay, here's a hypodermic needle, but if you get caught with a crack pipe, then we're going to arrest you. It doesn't make any sense, but I'll move on. This guy should not have been on the streets at all. He should not have been on the streets and allowed to be homeless like the way he was. He should not have been out there anyway, because he was a criminal outside of being a drug addict. He had a robbery, assault with deadly weapon. He got convicted of that in 2016. So how was he on the streets in 2018? Come on. I mean, with a weapon you use, come on. Just for the crimes he had before, not even including the more recent one, you should still be locked up. But if you add all the previous crimes up and the newest one, he should still be in jail. Now, some would say, oh, this guy, Cowell, he was out on the street early because he's white. Well, the reality is in these urban inner city areas like Oakland, San Francisco, or whatever, anybody that does crimes like that gets out early, especially the black folks, because people feel sympathy. They want him to, get his life back on track. It's turning life around and all this and that. So they give them early releases. They give them light sentences, or they may not even charge them. They may put them into a program and say, okay, if you could do drug treatment or something like that, then you won't go to the penitentiary and it's all good. That is a common thing that happens. Yes, it does. You could look all over the country. You could see the patterns. If you get locked up for something in a more conservative place or a place that's kind of outside from the city, you're going to get longer time, as you should. I mean, if you do a home invasion, why should you get a year or two in jail? Come on. You breaking into somebody's house while they're there. You got a gun. You threatening them with that. You might shoot somebody. I mean, come on. He should not have been on the streets. And this is why I say you need to have tougher sentences for crimes, because what usually ends up happening is you have a very small amount of people that do the same crime over and over again. When you have low sentences, you have a high recidivism rate. But for now, I digress. Let's get to Anne Hathaway. Now, who do we live our lives in fear from, Ms. Hathaway? That's what I want to know, because you're talking about the situation here from this crazy crackhead, this white dude who stabbed this young lady to death randomly at the BART station. How many times does that happen when it's black on black? I mean, that's a normal everyday thing for us. So if we live in our lives in fear, who is it really from? I mean, let's look at the numbers. I say it all the time, but I'm going to say it again until these people like Anne Hathaway and others who believe in what she says get the point. Black people, we're about 13% of the U.S. population at best. It's probably not even that much. It's probably right around 12.3 to 12.6% of the U.S. population. We account for 48% of all the murder victims, 52% of all the murderers, and 95% of the time when a black person is shot and killed or killed in general, it's at the hands of another black person. Now, some who want to support Anne Hathaway, they would say, well, killing is all about proximity. It's all about where you are. Whites kill whites, blacks kill blacks, Hispanics kill Hispanics. Well, let's look at the rate of it. That's the most important thing. I mean, look at the number one leading cause of death for black males aged 15 to 34. It's homicide. And I'll link to all my stats in the box, so don't take my word for it. Go to the CDC, the DOJ, the BGS, all these websites that are given to you by the government that tells you exactly what's going on. Some may bring up the FBI statistics, but FBI statistics are incomplete because they don't tell you everything, because not all jurisdictions report to the FBI. But I have the full and complete numbers from the same government that administers the FBI. But let's move on. These numbers can't be disproven. 13% of the population, half of all the murderers, half of all the murder victims. Come on. If I'm in fear for my life every day, who is it from? And let's not even talk about the interracial crimes. I mean, when you're looking at white on black homicide or crime versus black on white homicide and crime, what you're going to see is that the black on white homicide and crime is much greater than the other way around, in proportion, and also maybe even sheer numbers, even though that shouldn't be, since we're such a small portion of the population. And it's mostly black males between the ages of 15 and 35, maybe 15 and 30. Okay. That's what's going on. When I was a little boy, when many of us black folks were little kids, when you had to duck down in your apartment, house, or whatever, when they start shooting, who are you trying to hide from? Are you trying to escape the bullets that come out of a gun that's operated by a white man or a black man? You tell me. Okay. It ain't the police shooting through your house. It ain't none of that going on. I don't know how many times I've seen shootouts in black neighborhoods, black on black. People want to talk about poverty. Well, what does poverty have to do with X person shooting Y person because they looked at them funny, or somebody didn't try to talk to somebody's girlfriend. Petty issues that have nothing to do with economic anything. It's just stupid stuff we get shot over. Nobody's ducking down in their house, apartment, or whatever to escape the bullet of a police officer just shooting indiscriminately. You know, I know people in jail right now that are there for doing that exact thing. I've ducked. I've seen on the news many times where somebody would get shot and killed in their bed. Just like Jamila Bowden in the Ferguson, St. Louis area. Remember when the whole hands up, don't shoot thing happened and there was constant protests? Well, shortly after that, it might have been a year or so afterwards, there were two cases that happened. Two shootings. I think one was this guy, this more science type dude. I don't want to speculate on that, so I'll take that back. I don't know what he was, but his last name was Bay. And if you know about the black conscious community, you know what that means. This guy was getting involved with an argument with the police, and he ends up getting, I think he got shot and killed. There was a big protest for that. There was this whole big kerfuffle around that. But then right down the street, a little girl, black girl, Jamila Bowden, 9 years old, sitting on her mom's bed doing homework, gets shot and killed by a stray bullet from these den dudes outside shooting, and then indiscriminately the bullets just fly through the crib, hit her, kill her instantly. 9 years old, innocent little girl, black girl, killed by black people. Where's the protest and outrage for that? This is what I'm talking about. So when you say we live in fear for our lives, Anne Hathaway, who do you really mean? Are you talking about the white people who may shoot and kill a black person or stab somebody to death or beat them to death? Or are you talking about the majority of the time when black people are actually in fear of their lives, which is from other black people? So what say you? Do you think that Anne Hathaway is virtue signaling really hard right here and does not really understand what's going on? That's what I think, because if you really know what's going on, if you're really in tune with what's happening in the black community, you would know where the actual danger is coming from. All right. Now, the solution to that is to have harsher sentences, the same way that it could have solved the situation right here with this guy, this crazy crackhead, dope fiend, whatever you want to call him, that stabbed the beautiful young lady, Nia Wilson. If he was still in the penitentiary right now, this would not have happened. Okay? Straight up. And don't get this dude a light sentence talking about he's mentally ill. No, I'm not trying to hear it. I say give him the rope right behind the courthouse, give him the needle, or give him the chair. So then he won't be able to come out and do the same thing, or he won't be able to be in the penitentiary and kill a cellmate or hurt somebody that's in the actual institution that's there for a short period of time. But do you think that this guy, John Cowell, whatever his name is, do you think he's a white supremacist? And if so, explain to me why. I've not seen anything in the reports I've read that he was a part of any kind of political group. He was just crazy. And people like this exist. And this is what happens when you have drugs that are allowed to go rampant. That's what happens when you have sentences that are not really followed through, when you allow people just to come and go as they please from the prison system. Okay, this is what happens. This is the result of your liberal policy. So black folks, if you are really afraid for your life, ask yourself, who is it really from? And I implore you to go to a place where it's safer, in a conservative area where these liberal policies don't impact you and your family. But whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.